I am going to take a seat and grab this microphone here, because I don't have three hands. So thank you everyone for coming to our session today, and for taking part as well. So as Ian said, I'm Francesca Panetta. I am Director of the University of Arts London's AKO Storytelling Institute. So we're one of UAL's 4 institutes, and our mission is to support storytellers who want to make real world change. And we do that through research, through labs, through fellowship programs, training, education, and also through events like this. And today we're going to be exploring the question, what does it take to embed impact production in entertainment? So for the format for this session, we're going to have a brief presentation and then a panel for about half an hour or so, and then we'll break out into 3 tables. Each one will have a task. But before we get stuck into our discussion, I wanted to do a little bit of scene setting, as it seems that impact production means different things to different people. So to get us on the same page and maybe give us some inspiration, I'm going to give you a snippet from one of Britain's most successful comedy screenwriters and producer and director, who brought us classics such as Blackadder and Notting Hill, Four Weddings and a Funeral, and also co-created comic relief and organised Live 8 concerts. So it's a clip from a speech that Richard Curtis made when he collected his honorary Oscar last year.
I think sometimes, too often, that we stop just before the final lap of the race. Powerful films and TV shows are made, and everyone just sort of hopes they'll help change things. And they don't take the final step to create a mechanism in the actual production that helps to change things. And I would just plead with everyone here, when you make a film or a show with a powerful social message, an empowering, positive message like Barbie or Inside Out, to put aside a small fraction of your budget in advance to pay for an impact producer. And when films have a dedicated person or team to take the film and use it for campaigning, for targeted education, for changing laws, when films get shown to the right people in power at the right time, when films are linked to the right charities, amazing things can happen. And for the same amount of cash that you'd spend on a few more ads, an impact producer can help your film do more than move people. It can actually save and change real lives. So I just...
So before I invite other people to join me, I just want to make sure that we're all on the same page of what we mean by an impact producer. So it was a great endorsement from Richard Curtis, but I found myself often in conversations about impact production and got quite far down the line and realised we're actually talking about different things. So impact production really has come out of this world of documentary, and it was coined by Doc Society. They were called BritDoc back then, over 10 years ago, and it's now pretty established. It's got resources like the Field Guide, there's GIPA, the Global Impact Producers Alliance, and now we're beginning to see it in entertainment a little bit too. But what really is an impact producer? Well, they create a strategic plan and campaign around a work. So this is not the work itself, this is not an impactful production piece, it's the surround campaign. So traditionally that would be a documentary, but it could be a TV show, a film, a game, and the campaign isn't about increasing reach. So it's not a marketing campaign about getting bums on seats, increased viewers. It's really about reaching the impact goals. And an impact producer might be involved in really trying to define what those impact goals are. They might build the partnerships with NGOs and policymakers and community groups also to help achieve those goals. They're probably going to be involved in delivering and designing the actual interventions, the activities of an impact campaign. They could be involved in fundraising, in evaluation, a whole range of activities. And what an impact campaign looks like can be really, really different. Often it involves getting the work to certain audiences, certain communities. It could be in front of policymakers. The Oscar-winning movie Roma held a screening in Mexico's Congress, where one of their partner organizations introduced legislation granting labor rights to domestic workers. Mark Ruffalo supported the campaign around the movie he starred in, Dark Waters. So that campaign initiated a corporate pledge against forever chemicals, with brands such as H&M and Ralph Lauren signing up. So those are really specific audiences they were trying to get those films in front of. But it can also be really creative types of intervention. So An Insignificant Man, they created a board game which had like went all over the place. And the recent feature doc Power Station, which saw two filmmakers kit out their street with solar panels in their neighbourhood, they've just released a downloadable DIY kit to help other people create their own power hubs in their own communities. So they can look like lots of different things, an impact campaign. But as you can see from the examples I've given, a lot of impact production has been in the documentary space over the years. And we're interested really in seeing whether there's possibility outside docs too. So last year at the AKA Storytelling Institute, we ran a fellowship program, and we invited people from outside documentaries to come and see what impact production could look like for them. And Alison Ramsey, one of our fellows from last year and also an experienced TV producer and director, is now beginning to look at the potential for impact production outside documentaries. Also, BAFTA is also looking into this space, and I wanted to invite Louise up now. Louise, if you could let Louise through. Louise Anderson is Senior Research Manager at BAFTA, and thank you for joining us. Do you want to take this microphone here and join me? You can sit next to me, yes. So, as I say, you've been doing a bit of scoping work into this idea of what impact production could look like outside documentary. Tell me a little bit about what you've been doing.
Okay. I should first of all say that my colleagues from BAFTA Albert are here, I think, today. And BAFTA Albert is I'll explain why I'm telling you this. BAFTA Albert, for those of you who work in production will know, it's an industry-backed organisation that supports the film and TV industry to reduce the environmental impacts of production and create content that supports a sustainable future. And they have been they've been scoping out the landscape of impact production for much longer than BAFTA itself has. So I'm very much piggybacking on the work that they've done, so to give them their due. So I became involved with the research around impact production and impact producers much more recently. And to your point, really, I've been looking at impact producing and producers in a slightly different way to the kind of climate content that Albert have been looking at, and therefore posing some slightly different questions to the ones that they have, and thinking about a broader range of social issues within the entertainment space. So ironically very similar to what you were thinking separately. And as you've said, there are lots of examples in the documentary space of successful impact campaigns, but far fewer in that drama, feature film, factual entertainment space. And as you've also indicated, knowledge around impact producers and what they actually do is very limited in the industry. It's much better known, I think, in the US, but tends to sit much more squarely within the marketing department. And also one of the things that I've been looking at, and is a particular area of focus for me and interest for me, is that and I'm sure you're going to talk about this much more with the panel, but in drama there's much less of an appetite for impact production, and this is very much an area that I'm keen to explore and really understand why that is. So I've identified some research questions I hope that some of these issues will come up in the round tables, and I can pick your brains and take it away and think about it. So one of the things that Albert had looked at, and one of the things that I'm interested in, is the challenges that face impact producers in particular, and productions more broadly. What does effective impact production actually look like? And how do we evidence, measure and report the kind of impact that these campaigns are having? So that's my kind of research focus.
Yeah, and we were talking before a bit about some of your focus will be around the language and the literacy, because I went to kind of pains to explain at the beginning of the session what it was, partly because that is definitely one of the barriers that we're seeing when trying to kind of explore this area.
Yes, and I think there's such a wide variation in understanding, and some real, to your point, misconceptions about what impact producing is, and it often has negative connotations as well. So, if you get a whiff of campaigning or worthiness or preachiness, it's off the table. So it does bring with it, a certain level of negative connotations, I think, and that's something that we've found a lot. And then I think something that Ian said and you've said, and I'm sure we'll discuss in much more detail, what do we mean by impact? And I know it seems so simple, and yet it's so hard. It is such a powerful word, and it's so ubiquitous now. It's used in every context now, in every organisation, in every area of life. But what are we actually talking about? What change or outcomes are we hoping to enable? And that might be in this space about awareness raising, and it might be about reach and engagement, if that is going to deliver the outcome or the impact that you want to have, the change that you want to have. But as you've indicated, it can be so much more than that. There also appears to be, when you look at reporting, kind of wide variations in measuring and evaluating the impact itself. So I'm interested to know, because I'm BAFTA's evaluation manager, and I evaluate the programmes of work that we do, but I'm interested in what data and evidence people are collecting in order to demonstrate the impact that they've had. And then I think this kind of feeds into another point around the skills of impact producers themselves, and that there is a wide variation, and not being critical in any way, but we see a wide variation in the skills and experiences of impact producers themselves, and their ability to do all the different roles that they have to do, because it's a bit of a unicorn role. You need a unique set of skills from, strategic thinking, comms, advocacy. You have to know about production. So it's a lot of, and evaluation and monitoring. It's a lot, and it's a very unique role, I think.
And have you started to look at some of the challenges that impact producers themselves are facing?
Oh, yes, we have. I'm glad you asked me that. Yes, we have. And again, I have to lay credit at my Albert colleagues, because they have done more work than I have. But they have talked to impact producers, and I'm sure Lucy will speak to this on the panel. But the kind of things that impact producers are struggling with is a limited awareness and understanding of the role. The fact that full-time work is unsustainable. So to actually have a full-time job as an impact producer, if you're a freelancer, is tricky. And that's really because there's unclear funding models around impact production. There's limited evidence, as we've kind of spoken about, that impact campaigns work in mainstream fiction. So, and that often leads to misunderstanding or misperceptions about the impact that impact production will have on the crew itself. So what will this mean to me? And then also misunderstandings about what impact it might have on audiences. Audiences will inevitably won't want to engage in this content if it has an impact producer attached to it. Then there's a kind of lack of support and community outside of the doc field, is, feeling very on your own. There aren't many of them. And also as a freelancer, the role sits at the wrong level to drive change, because you're an outsider and you're brought in maybe too late, or, so that's some of the things that we found.
Finally, I wanted to ask what BAFTA is going to do about this. What is BAFTA going to do to support impact production? I can't tell you exactly. I can't tell you. It's an ongoing conversation at BAFTA, really. But obviously, it feels. I mean, I should say that BAFTA is a kind of key industry organisation and is committed to supporting professionals within the industry and supporting content and storytelling that has a positive impact. Sorry, I need to hurry up. No.
And obviously, we realise there's kind of real momentum at this moment in time, and that there is a possibility to make real world difference. So I think BAFTA is just one part of an ecosystem. So I don't think we're not going to change the world here. What might BAFTA's role be within that? Well, as I've said, it's an ongoing conversation, but we do have profile. BAFTA has profile, and we have convening power within the industry. We do debate and discuss live industry issues. And we do support individuals working in film, TV and games. So we're unusual in that we're a cross-sector organisation. And so I think if there's anything we can do to help or support, shine a light on a practice that is, plays a significant role in delivering positive real-world change, then that's a good thing for us to do. What that will look like, as I say, it's an ongoing conversation. But I think from our perspective, it's top-down and bottom-up, so it's supporting potentially, individuals, but also advocacy work from the top down. So we're looking at every angle, really.
Brilliant. Okay, Louise, thank you very much for joining the audience.
Thank you.
And our tables in time. And bring up the rest of the panel. So thank you all for joining us. So we have Husna Mortuza, who is Associate Director of Public Engagement at the Joseph Rowntree Foundation. We have Sarah Rappaport, Campaign Manager at the Jamie Oliver Group. Timothy Hancock, Commissioning Editor at Channel 4. And we have, Lucy Wilson as well, Impact Producer. So thank you for joining us. So we're going to be about half an hour now of chat, and then we will get on to tables. So Lucy, I'm going to start with you because you are our jobbing impact producer.
Hello.
Tell us about the project that you've got with Sky at the moment, because that is a bit different from some of the documentary impact production campaigns you've worked on before.
Yes, indeed. It's very, very different, and it's a steep learning curve, but it's been really good so far. So I'm working on the Dyer's Caravan Park, which is a programme that will be coming out on Sky in January. And Danny Dyer and Danny Dyer, his daughter, have invested in the caravan park in the Isle of Sheppey. And I've been brought in to work with Sky and the production team from Expectation to run the impact campaign. I've been initially brought on to look at the bringing back the British holiday, looking at domestic tourism in the UK. But since I've been working on the programme, there's some other avenues we're going to explore if there are going to be any other series in the future. But yes, it's incredibly different to what I've been doing. It's a structured factual comedy, and my previous experiences in independent documentaries and ITV as well. So it's a little bit different.
So do you know what the campaign's going to be yet?
I can't say too much. It will be about bringing back the British holiday, we've discovered some other campaigns that might lie alongside that. So it's still being discussed, so I can give more information.
So is that different from how you would usually go into a documentary campaign? Because you would be pretty clear, wouldn't you?
Oh yes, definitely. I think the difference with working on this, it's a lot of it's observational. It's sort of the storylines are brought up in the edit. They're still working on them. I think I'll hopefully get a glance in a couple of weeks. But usually you're working on a social issue and you know what it's going to be about. So it's much more straightforward, let's say. But I like a challenge, and it's nice to be doing something a bit different, and subject matter's a little bit less full on as it has been in the past, if there has been in the past.
And what about the difference of like the beast of Sky and everything that comes with it, all the resources?
Yeah, I mean, it's brilliant. It's
Yeah.
great. I mean, usually you're a one-man band and you're trying to do a bit of everything. But I think with Sky, you know, you're working with so many different teams and you've got that support. And obviously there's more funding, which helps. And, you know, I've got the backing of Charlie Conquest, who was speaking earlier, who's the responsible productions lead at Sky. So she's been really brilliant at sort of getting me out there, and I've done various presentations with commissioners and the production team at Expectation, just talking about who I am, who's this random person who's come in occasionally to work. But it's been interesting.
I wanted to ask you a bit about the timeline because, you know, I kind of mentioned the kind of list of activities that could happen, you know, in a campaign afterwards. But like roughly how long will you be working on something once it's been broadcast?
So it depends on the subject matter. Normally you're brought in, I mean, it's great if you've got the funding to be brought on right at the beginning. To give an example, I worked on a documentary quite a while ago now called Unrest, which is by a director called Jen Breyer, who was living with ME and CFS. And she started a campaign, for example, I think in 2013, she started documenting what she was going through. And the film premiered at Sundance in 2017. And then we were brought on board as the UK team April 2017, and then worked on it for about a year. And it's still making an impact now. So that's an extreme of an independent documentary that's really doing amazingly. In fact, I did see Lindsay Dryden, the producer, here earlier, but I'm not sure if she's still here. But yeah, it varies. But it's really good to be able to get in there at the beginning. And I think it's helped with the Dyers being in conversations since the beginning. So if there's funding, it's great to be involved early. So.
Okay. Sarah, I'm going to come to you because you're also an impact producer or a campaign manager, I think you call it.
Well, I would say I'm probably not an impact producer, actually.
What would you say you were?
I would say I'm a campaign manager. So
Yeah.
my job at Jamie Oliver's is about making the big changes that are a priority for us in terms of health and obesity and diversity and dyslexia, which we did most recently. And my job is about delivering those changes. And there are many tools that I may use in order to deliver that change. One of those may be through television, which I do closely with my television colleagues. And when we do that very much hand in glove. So it's interesting you're saying it's nice to be brought in from the beginning. So I find it bizarre to imagine a scenario where you couldn't be, because for us, and you know, the dyslexia documentary that our lovely commissioner put out in June, you know, from the very beginning, the question was, what do we analyse to be the problem? Why are 50% of the prison population dyslexic and 10% of your classroom is? And a really detailed analysis of why do we think that is a problem? What are the causes of that problem? And how we go about changing those in a really, really systemic way. And television often being a really helpful route through that change and driving that change forward. But we'll be very, very clear from the very beginning, how is that television constructed in service of that change that we want to deliver? And that will be weaved all the way through. So I will work hand in glove with the TV team. You know, we have conversations where I say, I need that for the campaign. And my head of TV will say, oh, that's great, but I need that for the TV. And how do those things come beautifully together? So I would say I'm a campaign manager first and foremost, and sometimes television is the most impactful way to drive that change.
And what does the campaign you were describing like working with the TV part, but what does the campaign look like for you on something like Jamie Oliver's Dyslexia Revolution?
I mean, it depends what the campaign is, but first and foremost is what is the analysis of the change that we want to see. So let's take Dyslexia Revolution, because that was quite recent. So, you know, we campaign for a particular change in terms of teacher training in relation to that. And you see that in the documentary from the beginning. We know that we're going to be asking for mandatory teacher training on dyslexia. So Jamie meets a teacher, understands that the teachers aren't having enough training. I think the teacher says she has 3 hours of training on neurodiversity in her 3-year course. And that goes all the way through. And we'll weave back and forth between things happening in the real world, so to speak, and then how you see that in the documentary, but also other things that you won't see in the documentary. So we just had a petition out with Spotify for people to be contributing their voice note for the impact that dyslexia is having on them, because we know that the government are doing their white paper now, and we're still trying to influence that. So I guess the other thing that's different about the way we work is the campaign is way, way before you see the documentary, or doesn't just have to be a documentary, but the TV show, all the way through. That TV production will look different because of the campaign and will be continuing long, long afterwards. My job is to make sure that, in dyslexia's case, that all children have a fabulous education that they deserve, and that doesn't stop when the documentary TXs.
And so if I asked you the same timeline question, like what does that look like then from beginning to end in terms of time?
Depends how long it takes to persuade the government, and that is as long as a piece of string. I mean, but I'm joking. Jamie started school dinners 20 years ago. I still campaign on school food, and I will still be campaigning on school food on behalf of Jamie Oliver for as long as school food is crap. So it's, and there may be moments of television production which are such helpful levers of change through that, but always with a sincere campaign at the heart of it. And I think, and you can all correct me, I think that's also some of the beauty of the television shows that we produce around campaigning at Jamie Oliver's, because that campaign is sincerely at the heart of it and can continue long after. And I hope people feel that when they see our campaigning shows.
Tim, I'm going to come to you next.
Tim,
So, Tim, you commissioned factual entertainment shows at Channel 4, like Dyslexia Revolution and the recent Joe Wicks License to Kill. So you care enormously about social impact issues. You're obviously really committed to them. You've got some reservations about impact production.
No, I don't know. I don't know if I've got.
No.
No, yeah. I mean, basically, I think that the Jamie Oliver model is good. Basically, the finance is the question, right? So I've done lots of these things. I did Joe Lycett versus the oil giant, which is where we sort of talked about greenwashing. We did the Joe Wicks protein bar program. That's sort of actually here we go. C slide, roll VT, but basically there's actually created some proper actual change. The amount of protein bars, don't take a photograph of it. It's don't do that. I was told by the producer when no one can see this apart from you. But basically, like sort of we called out Grenade Bar. Called up for Phil. They've sort of massively, and even in the last 5 weeks, have completely tanked. So so we have done some good things. I've managed to convince people to make TV shows and spend huge amounts of money on them. I suppose the question for me is, when you're in my world of I've only got a certain amount of money to make a TV show, and I'm desperate to make it good because that's the way it will have resonance. Do I have the money for what we need for the campaign? So for this Joe Wicks program, you need, like, if you then think we want to make regulatory change, I think, like you're saying, Sarah, you need years of like sort of action on that. And so the question is, what actually am I saying here? Am I then sort of going and saying, actually, it's not going to cost X £100,000. It's going to cost several million because it's going to cost double that amount. Like I'm not like sort of a Hollywood producer who has millions. I'm not making Don't Look Up and then making a little YouTube video on the side. My show is the campaign. So I am desperate to spend Channel 4's money on social impact, and I also think that impact campaigns are good. I've got around it by commissioning programs that are in themselves social impact campaigns, and you show on TV that essentially Jamie Oliver as an impact producer, or Joe Wicks as an impact producer, Joe Lycett. The Great Climate Fight was a bunch of other people, but basically it's a whole format of TV shows that Channel 4 makes, I make, which are all basically putting impact campaigns on television. That's where I get them funded, and so I'm a little bit like amazing that Sky is paying money for you. They've got loads of money. so obviously that's fantastic, and all positive things that you could do around a program are incredible. And I suppose I've got to look at it in a very sort of effective altruism kind of way of like sort of, we have this chunk of money, I've got this amount of commissioning space, where do we use the money, and how do we make the most impact, and what are the things that make the most impact? Just to sort of cut to the end in a way, I kind of feel like that the Jamie Oliver model is fantastic. Now, I was in an incredible position of being able to commission Jamie Oliver to do a campaign show where essentially Jamie Oliver is paying for this infinite campaign team of brilliant people who not infinite enough necessarily, but my point is that you have connections within government, which you're constantly fulfilling. You're constantly talking to the people that matter, and to run it in my I'm a commissioner, so I sort of sit miles away in the big tower. But from what I can observe, that is what makes the difference, and having that long-term campaigning angle. I suppose I feel like with the Joe Wicks program, this is my dream. I'm just going to say my dream, because maybe their funders in here, they'll do it. But basically, there is a charity or some external body that has all of that. Basically, is the sort of like Jamie Oliver model for campaigning that then Keogh, who made the film, talked to, and they say, we're making this film. Can you then campaign around it? And some billionaire who was sort of like got money to spends on this campaigning team. I think it's a genuine thing that probably could happen, and I think that. But I think I could campaign for or get money for the Keogh team to have enough resources to do the things around the program that it then would need to do, which is basically saying create regulatory change. That is. I feel like that's a lot of money that I'm already saying, here's a show. It's not probably going to make Channel 4 money because it's a campaigning show. It's only a one-off, and then let's spend loads more money on it. So I think that's that. So I basically feel like my question really is whether impact producers should be attached to programs, or whether they should be or whether impact should be thought of as a whole because of the long-term nature of it, and also the funding nature of it becomes a bit complex when I'm trying to get a commission, which is all like, we all know that TV is not necessarily flush with money at the moment. I'm not necessarily like, what do I do with this extra £1 million? That's not what it's like. But I think other people are, and other people looking for social impact are doing that, but they're not. But I would say that the best way to do it is to basically have two separate entities, and not say, Keogh, you're the makers of the Joe Wicks project. You also need to do this thing, especially considering that impact producer will end up. I'm sorry, that impact producer would end up coming to the end of the contract probably before we've made the change. And I'll stop now, I promise.
Sarah, take my mic.
Sorry, I really am going to be quiet, but
Go on.
Tia and I enjoy this conversation. I think what you're describing potentially in part exists, actually. So I think there are an awful lot of people, excellent campaigners, who probably would call themselves campaigners rather than impact producers. And it's in part a problem, not to split hairs over semantics, but that they don't, in the campaigners world, they don't understand enough about the TV world, that bridge hasn't come together well enough. Mm-hmm. Because, so I agree with you. I think asking Keogh to launch a campaign, firstly, it wouldn't be their expertise, right? So that wouldn't be the right place for it to go. But also...
But that is the idea of an impact producer, to be clear. I mean, isn't that what it is?
Well, I think they're to come in with that
but is it? That's what, is that what it is? Okay, so like I mean, like, is that what so if Keogh was to have an impact producer, for instance, on the program, what would their additional? So what would they be adding? Basically, would they be adding? That sounds. That's like. I mean, I'm sure they'd be adding something, but I suppose what would it be?
Oh, I'm not really sure. I mean, yeah, for having an impact producer, a standalone impact producer. Usually impact producers, and there's a few others in the room here from Impact World, correct me if I'm wrong, you've usually got quite a lot of different experience of working on various impact campaigns. So you're bringing that campaigning expertise to the field, but at the same time, It's a tricky one because
I didn't mean that you wouldn't bring something in. Just
No.
It was that I meant Keo as in the people who are producing the show.
Yeah.
Wouldn't be the people doing the campaign in the way that you would be, and maybe that is brought in as freelance to do that, or through the charity route. But that was just that is a different skill set which impact producers have.
yeah.
I'm going to bring in Husna here because Husna, it's all good. Foundations like the Joseph Rowntree Foundation, you care about social change. Like that is like right at the heart of what JRF is about. Do you see a role here for organisations like JRF to step in and have a role in impact producing? Because, you know, we're hearing about maybe I don't want it to sit with the broadcasters, I want it to sit somewhere else. Is there a space there?
I think this is a really fascinating conversation, and it goes back to actually what is our purpose? What is the purpose of each organisation? What is the purpose of people who actually want to create social change? So Joseph Rowntree Foundation is a social change organisation, believe in a just world free of poverty. But to do that, we do it in a number of ways. So we do have policy campaigns where we want to change rules and regulations. But we know that's through an electoral cycle. It's every 5 years. So in the meantime, what are the things that we could be doing? And a lot of this is long term. So that's why we start to enter into the cultural space, because some of the things that we need to think about changing are so deep-seated in our social, economic, political framework. It's about how do we shift perceptions before we even get to the policy conversations, before we get to some of the awareness. So by trying to invest and support some of these partnerships around arts and culture, I think absolutely philanthropy today, and certainly trusts and foundations, are looking into, well, how do we look at supporting people who are storytellers? Because storytellers from different background. I have no knowledge of TV, by the way, so I do feel like I'm complete outsider here. So I'm going to be very frank. For us, it's thinking about who are the storytellers? What kind of stories do we need? Where's hope? Where's love? Where's compassion? It's a heavy moment that we live in our world at the moment. So how do we actually try to support these storytellers to come through, even before we think about what a campaign looks like? So yes, there is issues around definition, but there's thinking here about, well, what's the impact we're all trying to achieve? And even within philanthropy, we have different understanding of it. But ultimately, our goal is we want to look at a different world, a kinder world, a more compassionate world. And if that's what we're doing, then we need to be in it for the long game. And I think maybe that's the difference I'm hearing, not from Sarah, but some of the things it's long term.
Yeah.
You know, and we have to be bold, and we have to not lose our nerves. And I think that's something that maybe TV could learn as well. I don't.
So one of the things that we've discussed, all of us, I think, previously, is about the relationship between civil society and between the entertainment sector, and it can be a slightly kind of uncomfortable relationship sometimes, because you were talking about, well, maybe we could just have this as a separate kind of funded body, but sometimes bringing in impact into productions early on can also be uncomfortable, because, you know, it can make people worried that it's going to make their pieces worthy, more boring. Like there's this feeling that it can somehow dull down a production as well. So I guess both for Tim and for Husna, how do you bridge across so that you are working together and supporting each other, but you can kind of speak the same language, have less reservations about what it means to work with each other?
Well, I mean, in terms of my job, I mean, I commission TV shows, right? And my job is to get lots of people to watch them, and it is extremely hard. It's never been harder, right, to do that. Because there's fragmentation of the TV market. You know, it used to be that you were sat at a TV and the television, you had no choice. You had to watch one of the 4 channels, and it would just tell you what it wanted, you know. And you sort of and there's some. I suppose sometimes when I have these conversations, I feel a bit like people are stuck in that world where it's like, well, why don't we tell people this? Well, the first thing is we've got to get people to the bums on seats, and that's really hard. So I suppose number one, I'm trying to commission programs that people watch, and I would. And that is and if you're not, everything isn't laser guided towards that, then you're potentially a bit screwed. So I would but then again, as I said, I've commissioned things that it's supposed to, that their whole thing is you watch this in order to be entertained watching somebody campaign, and hopefully like that runs, like you learn as you're watching it. If you watch the license, the Joe Wicks License to Kill show, you learn about UPFs, and it's a way in, and we decided to put Joe Wicks on it so people would come to it, and he's the right sort of voice for that campaign. However, once you get into the process of making it, you're desperate to make something brilliant and that people will at all watch. So I suppose I'm quite nervous about bringing other voices into the edit that are doing anything other than that after you've decided to make the program, and but then to have campaigns around it, I get that. After as I say, I'm making programs about the campaigns, and that's the way to do it. That's the way I've found to do it.
I guess I would say that kind of social impact entertainment, though, is broader than programs that are campaigns. It can sit within drama, within programs that are not have campaigning inside the programs as well.
Yep. Yeah, I agree. And Mr. Bates vs. the Post Office is an amazing example of that. That's not a campaigning program.
It's still about campaigning, but yes.
Yes, but I suppose the point is, it is the best thing to do to bring in producers or sort of impact producers into that process. Or is it good to like notice or work out that that's going to do well and going to like ignite a campaign and then build that campaign afterwards? I suppose is my question.
Well, let me ask the three of you, because I guess you guys would probably want to be in there earlier.
Can I just say, for me, it's about stories. So that's where we've got things in common. It's about where do the stories come from. So the Storytellers Fund is something we funded over the last 2 years. And actually, they were very creative. They were very funny. They were very innovative. There were these stories coming out from the ground where people were telling stories. And in a world where not everyone's watching TV, they go on social media, they go on TikTok. So there is lots of pressures, I understand. But these stories exist. And what trusts and foundations can do in partnership with others is actually push those stories up the chain. And we've funded so many incredible stories. We did not put any perimeters around it, but stories like We Can Fly. And if it's a gaming story about a young woman with mental health and autism, it's beautiful. So there's nothing here for me in terms of where people think about working with foundations or charities or campaigns about being worthy. It's just good. And it's good messaging that gets out to people, and it connects with us on a human, emotional level. And that's what a good story ultimately is. So I think it's something thinking through when we're developing stories at the beginning or maybe in the middle, is thinking, well, what else can it have this huge catchment for people to think through? Well, what else is needed? What can we do in terms of creating that change that we're all craving for?
Do you feel that storytellers and commissioners, people who are more in the entertainment industry, need to trust that foundations might be open to a slightly broader idea of what storytelling for impact can look like then?
I think so, and I think this is new for trusts and foundations as well. So you're absolutely right if you're thinking trusts and foundations don't do this, just give grants. But actually we're moving to a more relational position. What does that mean? That means that actually we're not just asking for do a project on poverty, stories on housing, because actually who wants to listen to that? I don't, and I work in a foundation because we've got our policy colleagues doing that. But what we want to do is be able to say, where are these beautiful stories that we know exist in our communities? So partly it's about actually how do we get those stories from people who may not have access to the media in the traditional sense, but how do we get those stories out? Because they're already doing it. Younger people are doing this on TikTok. So it's thinking about how do we then raise that stories in a way that actually gives you a national profile. And some trusts and foundation, whether it's Joseph Rowntree, Paul Hamlin, Esme, Comic Relief, The Power of Pop Culture, they're doing this. So it's thinking about how do you work outside your own silos. And that is something I have to do. This is very uncomfortable for me, by the way, to be in a place that's not full of policy campaigns and activists, to be with media. This is normal for you, but it's not for me. So to be in places that actually most people won't think you should be there. And I think it works both ways. Come into our world. And actually, let's think about how we can collaborate, genuinely collaborate on some of these issues. And it's not just the end product, Sarah said, it starts at the beginning and the campaign continues afterwards. But we need to be very clear, what is it we're trying to achieve in order to get what we want?
Answer the question that you put following Tim's comment and sort of at what point in that journey the campaign element takes part. And I'm going to put, Tim, correct me if I'm right, I think I hear a reservation that absolutely primary, absolutely primary must be incredible television and bums on seats. And as a campaigner, I agree with that. A campaigning show or campaign related to a TV show that's rubbish and nobody watches doesn't do anything at all. You can have the most gorgeous story ever if no one sees it. So I think there is, and I think this comes a little bit down to the point you're making in terms of trust and speaking different languages, is for as long as there's a concern that bringing in a consideration of impact and social impact would in some ways be negative to the ambition of an amazing TV show, that is a problem. So my head of TV isn't here, but we often say between us, great campaign makes great TV, great TV makes great campaign.
I was going to say that. No, I agree with that. Like, I think that's the thing. I mean, like, in a way, I suppose what I'm saying is that is, if you're, as long as you're driven by great TV, like, I believe that putting depth and putting realness and actually putting campaigns at the heart of TV makes them better. But like, if you have a purpose to make your TV show, it is a better television show, you know, like, and if it feels like it's sort of just frothy and there's got no substance, then you don't feel like you're nourished by that show, you know, like, so I think like, I'm definitely into like putting content into television, you know, that's the dream. I suppose the only thing I was saying is the thing that's driving it at the top, which is annoying for us all, because we like, I'm in TV really because TV is a great tool for social change as well as everything else. But like, if it's not driven by the quality of the program, then you sort of just lose anyway. So that's. But I think having people who know about the campaign, or understand about the subject matter of the program, and have also deeper knowledge to feed into it, that's all vital for a good TV show. Mm-hmm. But I suppose that's the thing that I'm. It's just in that edit, what's happening, I suppose, is the question. Like, and at what point does the campaign team come in, and how does the campaign work alongside the program? And I suppose it's so case by case, really. I'm going to hand the microphone back,
but I think that is right in that it's case by case. In that, the very special thing at Jamie Oliver's and why it's so wonderful to be there is that we are one team and deeply embedded, and so all of that trust that allows this as a TV decision or this as a campaign decision, or how do those things come together, is just inherent in how things roll. But I can imagine that that's quite challenging if someone is not is brought in from external agency, potentially in the way you were saying, and sort of a charity setup, and then they come in, and how that trust gets built, that's going to be so important if there is a concern that there may be competing priorities. Obviously, it's very special at Jamie's that we thankfully embed that from the beginning. Okay, I'm going to be quiet.
Lucy, I wanted to ask you about the kind of viability of all of this. So, you know, you're a freelancer, and we want to see impact production, you know, going further. But Tim has talked about, you know, the problems of squeezed budgets anyway. What is it like for you in terms of, you know, making this work viable?
Well, yeah, as we've alluded to, the industry is not in the best place at the moment, but a lot of impact producers I know work part-time. We do other roles as well. I've been working for a charity for a few years in fundraising, which sits alongside the role, so that helps. But yeah, it's tricky. Don't get me wrong, it's tricky, but it's very exciting that there is one of the broadcasters hoping to, you know, invest in it. To see what we can do. And just to talk about working with charities, I've worked with a lot of charities in my career so far. I used to work at ITV managing the charities there for their Tech Santa campaign. And it's amazing once you get charities on board how you can amplify the message for so many different subject matters. And yeah, I'm all for working with foundations and, yeah, I've had great experiences so far with that as well.
I mean, impact producers are kind of the bridge, or campaign managers. I feel like, Husna and I have talked a lot about the difficulties of that bridging across, but I do feel like the impact producer, the campaign manager, is like really key to that, because they understand both worlds. They're really good at navigating between them and seeing the opportunities. And it's a really skilled thing to be able to do that, because they are quite different. They are different worlds. So, yeah. So I think one of the things that I guess I've been thinking about listening to you guys this afternoon is it kind of also comes down to responsibility. So, like, who's actually going to embrace this, pay for it, make it happen? Because I guess, Tim, you're saying it's hard to happen in the broadcasters because there isn't the money.
Well, I'm just saying, I can only talk from my own perspective. I mean, like, I work in fact entertainment, which isn't the highest. It's not the lowest funded, but it's also definitely not the highest funded. Drama gets way more money than us. Comedy gets more money than us. So even though we rate better, so what does that say? But I suppose that's the thing, like, about whether the budget. I suppose it comes down to what is an impact producer supposed, like, what is the impact we're trying to create, and then how much does that cost? And then I suppose we can. It does feel case by case. Yeah. At the end of the day, if it's a minuscule proportion of this budget, then it would be insane for us not to do it. But I suppose I'm just using the examples of the programs I've made and the campaigns that I would have run around them. They are wide in scope and, like, sort of would take years. And that's where it's great to have the Jamie Oliver sort of model, where we've got loads of, where you've just got a long-term commitment to campaigning. And I think, it's like, where does that sit is the thing that I keep on asking. Like, and it's just simply, does it sit within, when I get something commissioned and that budget is commissioned, is that the moment when somebody says that there's the impact producer there, or is it some other separate budget? Because I think, in a way, it's probably easier from a practical perspective and just getting it done perspective of the other version. Yeah. I mean, obviously, if I thought I could get that money, I would go for it, because
you would go rather than more production.
If I was yeah, well, it depends. Well, the thing is that they're so squeezed at the moment, it's so case by case, basically. Like, but with at the end of the day, something like the Joe Wicks project is the reason why Channel 4 commissions it is not to make money. It's for people to look at Channel 4 and say Channel 4 is doing a good thing. That it's a one-off that sits at 8 p.m. It's not going to make its money back. So the whole point of it is to go out there and say we're going to make some change. And that with the dyslexia program, I went into the room and I was like, I'm going to get Jamie Oliver into Parliament, talking to, like, sort of, I basically made promises that I couldn't cash, but they did. But you guys really did sort of deliver. Like, I was like, he's going to be in Parliament, like, sort of campaigning for actual policy change, and that's like, it's all going to happen in one episode, and that, like, that's why it gets commissioned. Those programs, I don't say, well, it's going to put loads of bums on seats and everyone's desperate to learn about dyslexia, look at this research, because that's not the case. I'm saying Channel 4 has a duty to talk about this difficult project, this difficult subject. So I suppose my answer is the money is all good as long as it's making Channel 4. I suppose making Channel 4 look good, doing the right thing, basically, because that's the point of those commissions. So I suppose the answer is I would pay for it, or would convince people to pay for it if I could see that it was, A, I could convince people internally, and B, that I'd understood what it was and what we're going to get from it. With the Joe Wicks project, I think it would be too expensive.
We could talk at length here, but we're running out of time and we do need to move to our tables. So we are going to continue the conversation. The panellists are going to move on to the tables as well, so we can continue. But we have 3 tables, so I don't know which. Do you know which is which? Table 1 is over here. So table 1 is going to be around value. So how we can build understanding and recognition around the value of impact reduction. So is it language that's getting in the way? Do we need to be able to measure impact better? We didn't actually even get to impartiality and compliance, but where does that play a role in this? What is needed to make both civil society and entertainment space value it more? So that's going to be table 1. Table 2 will look at relationships. So what would it take to join forces, to bring civil society actors and entertainment industry to join forces on this to get impact campaigns that drive change? So how can they feel confidence collaborating together? What incentives would get campaign groups to get involved in all of this? What would it take to motivate them to buy in, all parties to buy in? And then finally, the third table is going to be looking at what a model form could be. So are there already existing case studies that we should be looking at? Do we need to commission something like an exemplar case study? What does quality control look like? Louise was talking a little bit about that. And yeah, who's funding this? So feel free to move around, stay on your table if you want, move around, we'll join you. There will be note takers, but everything will be anonymous. We'll be writing stuff up afterwards, but we won't name anybody. There'll be a facilitator, either from the AKO Storytelling Institute or from OKRE, who'll be facilitating each table, and then we'll just, in about, how long have we got, 15, 20 minutes? 15, 20 minutes. Each table will give just a couple of minutes, that's it, on the highlights of the discussion, and then we'll move back to the main room after that. So do feel free to move around onto a table that suits you.